Okay, we're live, and I appreciate. Actually, had somebody call us out for being live. That's the reason why we jumped in. We're actually having a back end conversation here. So, but we're live here. I have Amy and Matt with me today. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Okay, perfect. So we had Matt. This is a weird transition because we're talking about something totally technical. We're going into the topic, but I actually had Matt on recently on the talking about rehab estimation. You have a great product, Rehab Estimator Pro. I don't want to butcher the name, but it's a phenomenal product. Make sure that if you're watching this, you look through that video. It's on the feed. I think we have like 14,000 views on that one already. So it's on the feed here on the Flip Talk page. Make sure you look for that. But Matt's also here with Amy today because we're talking about private money and some other cool stuff. And so we're going to dig into that as well. So let's jump into the background here before we get into the conversation. So Amy, I'll let you go first. Tell everybody about your pedigree. Your pedigree, because you actually have you have a lot of great reasons to be a guest on this show. You're highly respected. I respect you. You're a good friend. You are very knowledgeable. So break down your background.
Well, I'm a Dalmatian. I'm kind of
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go. It's going to be one of those days.
Yep.
No, actually, thank you so much, Don. That's very nice of you to say. I am a lawyer of 20 years, believe it or not. I can't believe it's been 20 years, but I've been a lawyer for 20 years, focusing mostly on real estate during that time. Spent a little time working for the government, doing nasty things that the government does. And after that, I came back and started investing in real estate. So my first deals were foreclosures, and I got them by door knocking, of all things, back in 2002.
Wow, we share the same history. That's cool.
I know.
I didn't even know that. We've had many conversations. I didn't know that. Yeah,
we're like twins.
Yeah.
No, but anyway, one of the things that and that I also have in common with you is that I went through the crash of 06, 07, 08 and came out owning no properties after owning quite a few. My only difference with you is my divorce helped that a whole lot more than just the crash did. But now we have a group of about 8 of us, and we primarily operate in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we don't do as much flipping as we used to do, but we do a lot of wholesaling, we do a lot of buy and hold, and we do some creative type deals, especially now. So, but we've been doing it a long time, and I often tell people, mostly Matt, I tell Matt a lot, because Matt and I are good friends, and we work in the same market. That I don't think there's a deal that he and I are surprised about anymore. And it's all sort of like, oh, somebody died there, and we did a triple flip, and part of it was, the seller financed it, and then we got a bank to jump in, and then we had our private lender refi everything, and that's all we did today.
So, an easy one. Yeah,
it was an easy one, right? No, but we're having a really great year. We're having a really great time, doing what we do, and we hope to share with you a little bit about how we use private lenders and private funding, because much like you, Don, after the crash and getting $1 million line called due in one day, I just don't use banks anymore unless I absolutely have to, or the interest rate is so great that that you can't refuse it. So.
Agreed. I don't ever use banks for my flips just because of 2008 and everything that happened with 2008 and what I saw. So, and COVID, we saw some of that as well. We actually saw some banks decrease credit lines on credit cards and different things. I don't know that I necessarily heard anybody have a credit line called due, but we definitely saw the beginnings of credit restrictions, which is my biggest fear when it comes to having any kind of money borrowed. So, okay, Matt, and then of course your background. I know we shared that a little bit, but let's anybody who wasn't watching that one who needs to go back and watch it. What do you tell us about who you are?
Not as exciting as Amy, that's for sure. But
it never is. Like there's a whole exciting part of Amy, but go ahead. You're exciting, definitely.
I'm glad you had me go last. So.
Wait a minute, what? That sounded bad.
No, it's good. I've as we talked before, I've been a licensed contractor in several states for over 25 years. So that part, the Rehab Estimator Pro, that part, I love it. I breathe it. I live it, but getting into investing, man, is just a game changer. And it allows me to do all of those things. Right. And then I knew I was in it too long. Like Amy was saying, when all of a sudden I noticed an address on my website come in from Sell Fast With Us. I'm like, wait, that sounds familiar. That address. I look it up. I'm like, I've already flipped this house before. Like now it was a REO, and now it's a divorce. And so I flipped that twice, made equally about, roughly, a little under 40 grand each time on that same house. So I was like, wow, I guess I've been in the game too long if you're flipping the same houses twice or staying in the same market. Right. But just like we hammered the point home about rehab estimator, like, two things that you can't ever screw up in a deal, right, is ARV and repair costs. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing now that Amy and I talk about a lot, is that, look, there's two things as an investor. And especially, man, you got a great following, man, great people. Two things you can't ever stop doing. One is marketing in this business, and two, man, I don't care if you've never done a deal. You need to always be looking for private money. You've got to do it to stay alive.
And I want to be clear here as we get into this conversation about private money, that it's something you should be doing, especially when you don't need it, because as I'm sure you both can agree, like when you're desperate to fund a deal, like you stink of desperation, and that's going to be the biggest turn off to private money ever. There's a thing about private money that you definitely need confidence. You need to be able to put that lender at ease. They can bet on you to get something done, and that all bets are off when you need to fund something yesterday. So you should be looking for it from day one, and we'll definitely get into that conversation more and more. So, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you all on, with regards to having the private money conversations, because you actually built a course, and we'll talk more about that as we talk as well. But you guys actually put a course together teaching people how to lend, because you need to be educated as a lender on how to cover yourself, right? And then also teaching people how to borrow the right way, and there is a right way and a wrong way to borrow. So before we get into the right way, let's do that. Let's talk about the wrong way to borrow money. Let's share that. Give a couple of examples each of the wrong way to borrow money from somebody.
Oh, the most common one that I see, I think, because I handle title and I'm on the legal side, is the wrong way is to do it fast and loose without any documents, on a handshake, and they give the money directly to you. I mean, I think that gives me a heart attack every time I see people do that. It's like, no, that's not the right way to do this. This does not instill confidence in your lenders when you say, just give me a check. I'll do whatever with it, And it's surprising the amount of times that happens, where people come to me and say, yeah, I borrowed all this money and now I need to do some documents, right? I need to do something to show them that, that they're secure. And so, just absolutely not. The correct way is that the money goes to the title company. You execute all the documents ahead of time. You give them a note and a mortgage or a deed of trust if you're in a deed of trust state. But that's the one I see all the time. Just very fast and loose with no documents and no real professionalism in it.
Yeah,
but that's how we start, right? I mean, it starts with your close circle, friends and family, and we do it wrong. I used to have a guy, my first lender would actually bring me a garbage bag full of cash into my office.
Wow.
And I'm like,
that's because he was a drug dealer, man.
Yeah.
You know it. No, I'm totally kidding.
That's because
giving that a hard time.
That's what the government thinks. Okay. But no, I actually told him, I said, look, man, I don't know why. I don't know enough yet to know why this feels so wrong, but it's just, I can't do this. Like, I don't, if I walk out of here and get hit by a bus, what happens? Like, you don't even know that there's a house here. You know what I mean? Like, You don't even know what this is for. You just, well, I trust you. Well, I don't want you to trust me. So, but to answer your question, man, I think to add on the other side, watching so many people that come into the game right away, they everything's hard money, right? Like, that's how they learn. Like, hey, go to this hard money lender, and watching people. I've watched so many companies that are actually, they're predatory. They actually have a board where they show all of what they're foreclosing on, because there's so many points, there's so many junk fees included in all this that they're doomed to fail from the day they walk in that door. But that's their only option, they think.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to hit on, back up to what Amy said on the borrowing with paperwork. And you obviously validated that as well, Matt, about, the person bringing in the cash. A lot of people, I guess from a lender perspective, from a borrower perspective, like when I first borrowed and somebody would say, okay, yeah, I'll bring you a check and I trust you. It's like, I didn't see anything wrong with that, because I knew I was trustworthy and I knew that I would fight tooth and nail to get things done right. Right. Mm-hmm. What I didn't think about was the other side, because when it's not written on paper, it might as well be written on water. And so you have an agreement up front, that I'm going to pay you X amount of interest. I'm going to pay you back in this amount of time. And they come hand you a check and there's no documentation. And then when you go to pay them back, they're like, oh, I thought the interest was 5 points more.
Right.
You know, or didn't we have a profit share agreement on that? Or it's like you suddenly have this discussion and they're asking you for more money. And I've had that happen to me before. And I'm not saying that was definitely done with malice, but over time, people start to recreate conversations in their head, right? And you know, or it could be that, you know, that was their intention right out of the gate. So it doesn't just protect the lender; it also protects you as a buyer, the borrower, to have that stuff in writing. And when you're newer, you don't think about that and how important that is. But really, the last thing you want to do is take what you worked hard for and pay more money out of that to satisfy a lender because you didn't have an agreement up front.
Right. Well, the other thing is, and it's super important, you know, to kind of hit on this is that, you know, not only do you have this potential disagreement about what is going to be paid, but in the long run, it really is your job as the borrower to protect the lender, sometimes even from themselves. And a lot of people don't think about that. They're like, well, I'm borrowing money. It's his problem. It's her problem. It's whatever. No, it's your problem, because when there is a dispute, the one who loses is you, not the lender, or that should be the way it is. Like, for example, I had a property, it just went south on us, as sometimes flips do. And I had to bring money to closing. And the lender looked at the closing statement and said, well, why didn't you come and talk to me? I would have worked with you on the interest, or I would have done something else. And I said, it's not your problem that I lost money. It's my problem that I lost money. You get paid completely. If there's a loss, it's mine. It's never the lender's. But doing something like that, that person will lend to me forever. Because I didn't come to them and ask for a break because I screwed up. It was my problem. I messed up on that flip. So I have to take the loss. And it's super important to remember that, because that person lends to me on a phone call now.
Right. I mean, but what about too, if you're not spelling things out on the front end, because Don, you know, it's like, we've all been there, you know, we've all been in that position where, oh wait, I have too many going right now. I can't remember. Was this one 9 and this one was 12 point, or, you know, like, I can't, you know, yeah. So, but what about on the back end when something does go wrong, like you said? Because if you're in this business long enough, something's going to go wrong, right?
For sure.
For sure. So what happens if that loan goes from 6 months to 9 months to 12 months and nobody's had that discussion? Like, do I get paid extra? Does the interest keep going? Like, I think I should be paid more. You know, nobody has that discussion on the front end. It's even harder on the back end, right?
Right. Your phone weighs 500 pounds when you have to do something like that. If you haven't spelled it out, it's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. And why would you want to feel that way when it's avoidable on the front end?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of a conversation that you should be having every aspect of this business. You got to give real expectations and document everything with sellers. You have to give real expectations and document everything with contractors. You have to do the same thing with private money lenders. I mean, across the board, that's where contractors will get you and just nail you with change orders, you know, or sellers will not move when they're supposed to move, or all kinds of other crazy things happen. We're not having the hard conversation and then documenting along the way. So it's a practice that, you know, I guess I just want to like reinforce everybody listening, should be done in every aspect of this business. And those of us that are entrepreneurs, that's usually the part of the weeds we hate, but my God, is the part of the weeds that protect us every single time.
All right. I can't tell you how many times people call me and say, well, you did the note and a mortgage for me last time. Do you really have to do it again? Do I really have to have title again? I just had it on the last one with this guy. And it's true. There is a way that you have to handle this every single time. And we put a very loose checklist together for both parties, because it's one of those things like, I don't know about you, Don, but I am a checklist person. Like, if there's a checklist, I'm good to go. If there's no checklist, I'm running around trying to write one. I'm trying to make sure it gets covered. And I think that it's super important that as we go through these transactions and we're getting private lenders, they should know what to expect. They should know how you're going to act. And they should know, hey, if you don't do something, they should look at that and go, wait, you should have done that. Why didn't you do that this time? Because honestly, it protects everybody in the transaction. And that's what your goal is, right? Like, nobody wants to be unprotected in a transaction. So certainly your lender feels the same way. And this is a relationship business. So you really have to treat these private lender relationships as important, because they truly are quite possibly one of the most important parts of our business.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I remember in San Antonio, we had the first Inner Circle Elite meeting. I was sharing with the group that I had a potential deal I had a deal at a rehab that was potentially going to be about a $50,000 to $60,000 loss. It ended up being just a little under $60,000. It's the biggest loss I've had to date. Really one of the only losses I've had. We just everything went wrong on that project, and 100% of the loss was interest to the lender.
Yep.
100% of the loss.
Yep.
And we paid it, and it is what it is. And, but again, it's like you said, how much more money are we going to make in that relationship long term? So I want to state, like, we've all been through it. I'm not immune to it. I think everybody that does rehabs at some point in time is going to have to be faced with a situation where it's like, do I go and ask them to forego their interest, or do I pay it? At the end of the day, there's a huge cost to not paying it. So I just want to back that up, what you said there. So
right, it just really is important. I still have a lender that's from 2004. I mean, you can keep those relationships alive. And I can tell you, and Matt knows this because I talked to him the other day about it, but I have a lender that called me and said, why aren't you flipping more houses? Why aren't you doing any more? I have money sitting here,
Happen.
Aren't you gonna do a flip? And I told him, I said, I'm not doing any flips right now. I'm buying rentals. I'm happy. You got about 12 to 18 months. He goes, I don't want to wait that long to get paid. And I'm like, 12 to 18 months is too long.
Right.
for 10%, really?
Yep.
But you have to talk to them, and as the market changes, you have to manage their expectations, and you'll keep them.
Right.
Really.
And that's a great point, because most of my private lenders are people that I have experienced problems with, in essence, along the way, but they've watched me come through and rise to the top, and it's fair in the end, and they're the ones who want to just keep going and going. And it was one on a deal that went south that it wasn't too bad, but I had to meet him for breakfast with my checkbook. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I just happened to throw out there, I'll never forget this, when we were discussing this, and I told him, hey, this is what it's going to be. This is what it is. And here's the paperwork, and thanks for trusting in me. And I'm going to stroke this. And I said, I just threw this out, like, hey, but hey man, I mean, would you be interested in splitting this? And I never expected anything. And he goes, yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Let's make it up on the next one, maybe, and let's just split the difference here. I'm like, oh, wow, I wasn't even expecting that. But that's why, like you said, it's such a relationship business, and that lasts for years. Right.
If they're making a ton of money with you and you got to have a conversation like that, I mean, they're realistic about it too. I mean, you're paying them, 10%, 2 or 3 times a year to do this stuff. That's not just 10%, and that compiles. And so they do get to the point where they're like, well, don't you want to do another flip? Why don't you just keep the money, and you're like, no, I don't do that. You take it back, and then you give it back to me on the next project when we need it. And just stuff like that is super, super important to know, that you need to do that. You can't hold on to their money just sitting in your account somewhere.
Right. That was going to be a question. So let me frame the question for the audience, because I think the answer is going to be different if you have somebody who's never been through a market cycle and somebody who has been through a market cycle. Because I know my opinion pre-2008 is different than my opinion now. So borrowed money unsecured, where essentially, for anybody who's listening who has not borrowed before, borrowing unsecured is when they hand you the money and you put it in your bank account and you operate your business and you hold it for 6 months or a year or 2 years, and you pay them the interest, you pay them back at that period of time. Borrowed money secured is when you do a note and deed of trust or a mortgage against the property.
Right.
And it goes into escrow, buy the property. When you sell the property, the money goes directly to the lender. You're not really handling their money. So just the differences. Obviously, from what you just said, you prefer borrowing money secured. Why do you not want to borrow money unsecured? Let's answer it that way.
The simple answer is I don't want to commingle their money with my money. And so if I'm holding on to a check in their account of their money, where is the line between what is mine and what is theirs becomes blurred. And, just from my perspective, and Matt may have a totally different answer here, but I never take unsecured money. It is not good for my lender, and it is fraught with issues on the other end of stuff. So I don't do it. I agree with you. Before 2006 and 7, when we seemed unstoppable and the market was never going to change, and it was just going up and up and up and up and up forever, and no one, had any vision to see that, problems were forming, kind of like now. But, whatever. I would have commingled it and not really had a second guess about it, and just kept writing interest checks, to the people, and everybody would have been happy. But I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that since before the crash, but the crash really solidified, they need security for their money. I mean, I don't want to be a bank where the FDIC, jumps in and insures all their money. I want nothing to do with that. So I take it on a case by case basis. Makes it more complicated and it takes an extra phone call, but I don't want to handle their money. I want nothing to do with it. I want their money to go to the title company, and when it's done, the title company sends it right back to them.
Right. What about you, Ben?
I will definitely secured, but the difference here, I mean, we're always putting a mortgage and a note together, right? For where we're at in Wisconsin. So we're putting that mortgage and note together. So it is secured that way. Now, I don't keep it in escrow. The title company does cut me a check. And that's what I'm using. Now, when we're borrowing to others, we definitely, until there's that, that is definitely kept in escrow, and it's draws.
You have a double standard, Matt.
Well,
but you're talking, you're talking about, it's apples and oranges conversation. You're talking about the rehab funds, right?
Correct.
You're not borrowing the money to hold for an extended time with no property attached to it.
Right.
Yeah, that's different.
That's different.
Very, very, yes. But other than that, yes, it's always it's title companies. It goes back to them through the title company. Yes. So, but now the problems, again, of course, we can talk about problems. We do flips, right? I mean, you're going to run into problems when taking that rehab money, even because we have definite parameters and draw schedules for just those rehab funds as well. And so, but giving that all to a contractor, grave mistake as well. Mm-hmm. And that's going to kill you at some point. Now, it may go great on a dozen flips with the same guy even, but life happens, different experiences happen in their lives, and it goes bad at some point. And you don't want to be sitting there going, wait a second, I've shelled out 30 grand and there's about $2 grand worth of work done. What's going on?
So I think, Matt, just to clarify, you're talking about what would be an escrow agreement for rehab funds, where the title company is doling out to the contractors, in little chunks to control just that kind of thing from happening.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Okay. I also just noticed Michael happens to agree and says that there's too much temptation for the borrower. I absolutely agree with you, Michael, and I haven't caught some of the rest of these comments, but way too much temptation to hold on to that money.
Well, it's an unrealistic place to be. I did that. I borrowed unsecured for a number of years, and I would do like 1-year terms and give real favorable interest rates, and you end up with this illusion of capital that is not yours, because if you have 100,000 sitting in the bank, but you borrowed 200,000, you're actually in the hole. You're broke, I should say, or you borrow 300,000 and you're in the hole. You're not sitting pretty, but you'll feel like you are, and you'll make decisions that may not be the best decisions for where you're at in your business if you have that kind of disconnect between reality and what's in your bank account. So that's number one. But number two is so many people use that money for marketing and payroll and half a dozen other things and then when it comes time to pay, it's not there, because again, that disconnect between reality and where they really stand. So it just, for me, it just made sense. I borrow for the project, I pay back for the project. I borrow for the project, I pay back for the project. What's in my bank account's mine.
I think that's a better practice.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Yeah.
And I ran into a unique situation where this was all their attorney approved, where they actually.
I can tell you right now, it wasn't me, because he just made that caveat. It was attorney approved, so it wasn't me.
Okay, but hold on, Amy. It was guaranteed. Okay, I know you love that word, right?
I hate that word so much. So much.
Yeah.
He's just poking the bear right now. He knows I hate that word.
So, but they actually used just family funds, but they had well over $1 million into this. So, but they put all of it into one pot, and it was their business account, and they were using it to buy vehicles, to do their marketing, and everything was working great. And I'm telling you, for a long time, over a decade. Okay. But guess what happened when it didn't go great and they decided to split as partners? It was a disaster. Okay. And you had guys threatening to sue. They wanted to see the books. The books weren't kept. Like, you just don't want to go down that road. It may work well for a while, but man, there is an end at some point.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Money's a funny thing. With family, with friends, in business, with partners, between lenders and borrowers. I mean, there's so much emotion tied into money that, again, people can misconstrue conversations. That's why you got to have in writing, or remember something different, or, you forget where they stand financially, make poor decisions. I mean, there's just so many, it's so important with money. And I want to say it, and I know you guys will back me up. You just got to have every I dotted and every T crossed. We're not even getting into the securities and exchange conversation in this,
Oh, God,
podcast, I'm sure. So, yeah, but
that's like a
that's a whole
whole
different thing.
other conversation, right?
But it just, and so many people, it's like the wild, wild west right now. They've never lost, or, they're new and they think it's never going to end. I remember I was there, and it's so easy to think, well, I don't have to do all these extra little steps to protect everybody because it's never going to end. And for the three of our experiences, we've seen it end. we've seen the music stop and the chair get removed. So
right.
Yeah, we still have a mutual investor friend that is still in jail, and that
he was not a friend. Let's get that.
well, okay.
Wait a minute now. I'm going to correct you on that one. He was somebody we knew.
I would consider him a friend at some point, but yeah,
you would.
At a certain point. But yeah, and honestly, he was, there's a fine line here too. He was writing his own notes, and so that's when the state jumped in and just said, this doesn't feel right. It's like, well, even if you can write your own notes, why? Why not have the attorney do it? Why not have the title company, take these documents and don't handle it on your own?
I think you look at it this way. You are passing all of the risk and all of the liability to the lawyer and the title company then. So if something gets messed up, it is not your fault. And they have to fix it. You don't have to fix it. So whenever you get the possibility of passing liability to someone else, you should absolutely opt for that. They are the professionals. They are the ones who are supposed to be doing this every day. Let them do it. It doesn't cost you that much money that you should be sitting there fretting about a couple $100 here for this and a couple $100 for title. It's honestly, if you can't afford that, you probably should not be doing these deals right now. And maybe you need to focus on something else to build up a little bit of cash. If that's a problem. In title states, I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry, but in title states, like mine, the title company generally does that kind of stuff for free. Like, we have an approved note that our lender and our title company hammered out, and we'll key the information in, like the date and terms and prices. We'll send it to the title company. The title company will get the approval from the lender, and they'll make any changes accordingly amongst themselves, and we stay out of it. They design it. They put the document together. They tell us, put the information in, send it over to them, and they handle the rest of it for free. So, and I would prefer to go that one more step and have the title company actually put the terms in, or the lender put the terms in. They both opted not to do that part of it. But in some, the point is the lenders though are not sophisticated enough, to be doing that for themselves. So we definitely lean heavily on the title companies to have them do it, and you should. That's what they're there for. And if they charge you something for it, it's minimal. And so I really just wouldn't get super excited about that. But yeah, if they screw up the title, if they screw up the terms of the note and everybody's upset, that's their problem to fix it, not yours. So definitely pass that off. If you're an attorney state, like Illinois or, something else, well, dude, let them handle it, stay out of that kind of weeds. Those are weeds you don't need to be in. I don't even like to do that stuff. And I know, and I'm trained to do that stuff, and I still don't like to do it. So, but really, that is being a professional who is handling their business professionally.
Agreed. So Vicky here asks a while back on the conversation, what is an optimal amount of time to turn private money? I'm sure we'll answer the same way. So I'll let one of you guys take a crack at that.
I would just say it's whatever your private lender is willing to approve, and what's your exit strategy. So if it's a flip, then, 4 to 6 months is pretty normal with maybe a 3-month extension in case something goes bad. I would plan that in, because sometimes, you miss calendar events because of contractors, or it takes a little bit longer for somebody to sell their house, or, it can happen. There can be delays. So I always put at least a 6-month kind of thing in there, with one additional, like 3-month term or 6-month term or whatever. But however optimal, that totally depends on your lender and your exit strategies.
Right. And it's kind of known in the business, that 6-month benchmark, is the magic number.
Right.
That's what we're all shooting for. Right. But it can change, obviously, and you want to stretch it out. But you got to remember too that you're conditioning your lenders as well. So if you're constantly turning that at 6 months, but you're calling it 6, but you're turning it in 4, or say it's 6 and it turns into 9 continually, you're paying a couple extra points. Now we're going out, and Amy, you're doing this as well. We've talked a lot about this. We're trying to go back to our lenders and say, hey, look, we're getting into we know there's some really good deals coming, rentals. We're picking them up now.
Right.
Again, I sold them all before. I'm picking them up again. And so I'm looking for, sometimes 12 to 15 months terms.
Right.
Well, my existing base of lenders, they're kind of looking at me like, no, I don't like how that feels. Let's not do that. And it's like, okay, so now I'm having to go out and find a new generation of, a new group of private. I keep these others for my flips, but I have to find newer ones that with lower interest rates and longer terms.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's just a turning of the cycle. I mean, that's just a market, that's a regular and normal market cycle. And so that's how I explain it to him. It's like, well, it was time to flip, but now it's time to get rentals a little bit more than it is to flip. So you need to change your mindset along with the market. Otherwise your money's just going to sit there.
Right.
I can't help you.
Yeah. And I've experienced the same thing. It's really the conversation between you and the lender. I'll back that up, and what you both agree is right for the relationship. I have lenders who do not want to do short-term loans for flips. They want their money parked for an extended period of time. Right. And I have lenders who want the flips because they want their money turned constantly. And so it's really managing lenders is managing personalities. I always say that. That's why I'm one lender, one project. Yep. That's it. Because I only want to deal with one personality on that project. I don't need 10 personalities on that project.
Right.
So, now, I'll tell you though, you're right. Now, when we talked about managing, I love how the way you say that, managing relationships, man, because just in this last cycle with COVID, I was starting a big refi with my getting all my private money lenders out. So now I'm dealing with 8 private money lenders in this one refi package. And I had to write twice a week to them. I wrote them an email every week just to kind of give them an update, just kind of make them feel safe. They were all getting pretty nervous, but again, communication is such a key in all of this. But you are managing those people, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. So Wade here, this is a long one. I'm not gonna be able to read that one. I don't think, my eyes are horrible. Really like your outlook on this and agree. I don't want much more than I absolutely need at the moment. Let's see. He just basically goes on to agree with what we said as far as doing BRR, the bird tactic and everything else. So taking them out in 6 months. So, and then let's share this one over here. I'll let you ask that question there, Amy.
Okay. Okay. So the SEC is a totally different dog. And if you're doing, one-on-one lending where they are lending for one property in your state, you're not necessarily registering them with a deed of trust with the SEC. You're not registering that. So one-on-one where they are getting a note and they are getting a mortgage, that is generally in almost every state not something that you have to deal with. It's truly a private lending institution. So they are lending to your LLC from whatever they're lending from, and that would not need an SEC filing. So I'm not sure if you have another issue that you're trying to get at in the question.
Well, if he's even saying, qualifying, when do you need to be registered with the SEC? The answer to that is no. But in those qualifications, none of our private money lenders typically are actual investors that meet the qualifications, like $500,000 of liquid, cash you have to show, and so many assets that you have to show. We're not dealing with those kind of people, with those kind of investors. So.
Right. This is just a one-on-one type situation, and so you have to be concerned about your state regulation and the SEC. But if you are lending, like if Don is getting a loan from someone who lives in California and is lending to him in California, for example, and they have a note and a deed of trust in that state, that's not something that you have to register with the SEC for. So the person or the transaction.
Right.
Yeah, I would just state that the way I understand it is you have to, before you can ask to borrow money or to start that borrowing relationship, you have to have some kind of connection with that individual. It can't be a complete stranger off the street.
Right.
And well, Amy's an attorney. I know you don't specialize in SEC work, right? So, and I'm not an attorney. I know Matt's not an attorney. So we want to state that here, that we're not experts in that, but the way we understand it is that you don't. I know when you start to pool investors, you have more than one lender per property. That's where you're going to run into issues with the SEC. And of course, if you are soliciting strangers, you're not creating a relationship before you create the borrowing relationship. You're going to have issues for sure.
I do remember getting a full screaming match, being attacked. It's all good. Love it. My coach called me after I put a Facebook post that I put, and he started screaming, "Take it down, take it down." Like what's going on? Completely ignorant of the fact that, I'm putting interest rates out there. I'm asking for money. I mean, it's just a broad, you got to be really careful with that. So you're right.
Right.
And that ask has to come. The ask can't come, on the first date, in essence either. You've got to have.
You guys always have to go to the dating analogies. Like,
it's a perfect analogy for all of it.
Talk about it. It's like,
Yes.
well, you aren't going to take her home on the first date. And then the guys in here are like, you're not gonna? Wait, what?
I think that's how I talked to my acquisition team about talking to sellers. Though you don't sit down on the first date and go, "I want to get married and have 5 kids, and I want to do it next month." You don't do that with the seller. You gotta.
Thank you. That's better. I appreciate you expanding that a little bit. I appreciate that. My sensitivities were being,
Oh no.
No, I'm totally kidding. But it as much as I make fun of it, it truly is a good analogy because you're not going to take a whole bunch of money from somebody when you're sitting down for the first time and talking to them. The general rule, and this is not written anywhere, guys, but it's just sort of like the unwritten rule that goes on, is that you really need to engage with that person 3 times before you're borrowing money from them. Because then if somebody does have a problem with it down the road, you can say, look, we met with them again. We met with them, explained the transaction to them, and then they decided to lend. And so it's not just some stranger off the street. That's really the test that gets used the most. But if you have any kind of concern about that, sit down with an SEC lawyer. They're not, one conversation with them is not going to be so expensive that you can't do it. So if you have those kinds of questions, like Matt and I talk about this a lot, where we talk about having a team, and it's true no matter where you are in real estate, but it is super true when you start talking about private lenders. You need to have a team of people with you, and it's the same team. You need to have an accountant, you need to have a lawyer, you need to have contractors, you need to have all of these things. But it's super important with private money that when you start having those discussions where you're worried about the SEC, you're in it pretty deep, and you need to talk to somebody that specializes in that. Okay. So we don't want to push you off at all, Victor, but we also want to make sure that, we aren't SEC lawyers. And so that is a good call for you to reach out to one and have that kind of discussion with them.
Yeah, definitely. So, and I just want to real quick, this is kind of off the cuff, but I want to acknowledge Wade. He said sorry over here, I guess, because I made a comment about the not being able to read the post. And I just want to say, Wade, I'm old. I need to wear reading glasses to read, and I'm not going to put on reading glasses when I'm on live.
I had to adjust to these.
Yeah.
Let me read the back. Let me read the last part of it for you old people. Okay.
He with the gray hair can keep talking.
Right. Yeah. My grandson was born last week, so I'm a 44-year-old grandpa twice now. All right. So my private money lender will fund more than he needs, and he needs to push a little over to another property. What would you suggest borrowing % of ARV and term? I'm planning to hold, so essentially a burr, taking around 6 months. So
that was Wade's. You're reading
Wade's. Yeah, we're reading Wade's. The one I skipped through because I was too embarrassed to put on my reading glasses.
I know, but it is a question. Like, it's if it's 43% ARV and he can do most of the rehab himself, the lender does want to fund more than he needs to. So, but he wants to push more to another property. Amy, what do you say about that?
You have to have that conversation with that lender. I mean, there's no, if that's what you need to have happen, that it needs to go to another property because that lender wants to lend more, that's not a problem. Just split it up into 2 notes, 2 mortgages, or deeds of trust, whichever state you're in, for 2 separate properties. Mm-hmm. So, that's just an easy conversation to have with that lender. Like, look, you're trying to give me too much money. Like, don't give me that much money. I don't need it. So if you want, you can move some of it over here and you'll be secured on this property. And then you'll be secured on this property. You are double secured at that point.
In our general rule, as if he's asking us, he was 43, he's saying what % of ARV? We generally start at 65%, but that's a very conservative. You're in great shape. Your lender's in great shape.
Right.
But, going up to 70%, not a problem. But I think you should stay in that range, 65 to 70%.
We don't ever go beyond that. And it's not because we can't. It's because for their protection, if something goes wrong, we have the ARV wrong, there's an instantaneous market correction, there's something there. There's a 30%, cushion there for everybody. And it's just a way to protect everybody, and they'll feel really good that you are building in that much protection for them. And that's the way you should explain it. Look, I just don't take any more than this amount of money. And it's for you, not me.
Yeah. And it's important too, because if they're lending, and the lender could argue that I lent on property B, but you used it on property C, and a good attorney can make an argument that you defrauded the lender, or you did something, even though you had an open discussion about it ahead of time. If something goes wrong and they want to try to use that against you, it's important to document that the money's going to 2 different properties, or it should be 2 different notes and deeds of trust. But I know lenders and hard money lenders will do blanket loans, or they'll loan on 2 properties at one time. You want to make sure, if that's the case, that's spelled out, that's what's happening. And then you also have some kind of, individual release of each property if you're going to sell one ahead of the other one.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of
and it can get messy, hey,
right.
So
I would just look to keep it as simple as you possibly can, because the simpler you make it for that lender, the less likelihood that you're going to have a problem down the road.
Right.
Like I've had lenders come back to me and say, hey, I thought we were doing 10% and 2 points, when the mortgage says 8% and a point. And I have to bring the mortgage out and say, did you read it? Did you read this before you signed this? Oh yeah, I guess I misunderstood. Or I even had somebody say, well, I don't think that's what I signed. And I was like, well, you did it with the title company, not me. So you should really talk to them. And that way, that's another way of just insulating yourself and keeping yourself out of having disagreements with private lenders. I didn't draft it. You had to deal with the title company. If it's somehow wrong, you need to talk to them. But that's what you signed. So, I want to make you happy, but it sounds like something's wrong here. Let's see what we can do about getting it fixed.
Yeah, and if it's an honest understanding, I mean, there's nothing wrong with maybe meeting them in the middle or something like that. But I have found that the lenders that usually tend to do that, it seems to be practice, and they'll tend to do it on every single loan.
Right.
And those are the lenders.
I get tired of that Mickey Mouse stuff, and I just don't use them anymore.
So we have a question here. It says, what happens if your flip doesn't sell? Well, you find a way to sell it, and you cut a check for the difference.
Right.
Yeah.
So you know what? Honestly, I can tell you right now, I have one of these, and it's my first one ever. And I'm already engaging the lender to just say, hey, look, every flip does sell. You either start dropping the price by $10,000 a week, okay? Right, and which that's where we're at. So or we're even having conversations right now. Like, it's in a neighborhood he loves. He's looking for house. Like, I'm willing to just give him the paper and say, all right, it's yours. We're done. We don't care. You can have it. So, I mean, you have options.
Ditch thing,
Communication, key on everything.
It's absolutely key.
100%.
So, Maria has a really great question, and I know Matt wants to answer this because, he just mentioned that he got yelled at for doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It totally depends on how you're doing this. If you say, I'm looking for private money at 3% interest or 8% interest or whatever, that's a problem.
Right. Here's how I do it, Maria, and I think this is the best way that I've ever attracted money. Is I will take a deal that closes and throw pictures up and say, man, another private money lender closed out today. Love it when these things turn like this. This is such a great relationship. Looking forward to the next one. I'm selling it, and I'm not even asking for anything. I get people contacting me in Messenger. I get people calling me. Hey, what's that whole private money thing? Like, what does that mean? So that's a great way.
Yeah, I've seen people. I'll be honest, I don't do the Facebook thing, not for any other reason than probably just being lazy. But I've seen people post like, they'll have a stack of checks, and they'll be like sending out another round of interest checks to my private money lenders today. This is such a great feeling to be able to blah blah blah, and sharing that something you're doing, that I paid somebody out is not soliciting, it's sharing. And there is a difference in, I'm not asking for money. I'm just sharing, this is what I'm doing, that people want to.
The one caveat I want to make is that a lot of people say, hey, if you're interested in making this kind of return, give me a call. Don't do that.
That's where you get in trouble.
Yeah. Don't do that. Just say, this is what happened. This is, we had another great deal that closed and here's how it shook out. And, you could just put on there, private lender was, paid X amount of dollars, and just go on. That's all you got to do is that is enough to get where you need to go. But asking and what's called soliciting for money on any social media will definitely get you in trouble. So please don't do that.
Can I get you in trouble here then a little bit?
Sure.
All right. So at the end of Amy's email, because I've actually had people comment on it, and I think it's brilliant. But so she gets really close to the line here.
I do get really close to the line.
And she says on the bottom, and again, it's this soft, little, hey, if you're not making 8 to 10% on your, investments, let's have a chat. That's it. She didn't ask for money. She didn't say they were going to make 8 to 10%.
It is close to the line. I will absolutely admit I do dance on it a bit. And
it's email though. It's a private email when you're sending it to people that you know. It's not a Facebook group.
It is, and you have to be engaging with me to receive the email. So it is close. Would I put that on Facebook? Absolutely not. I would never put it on social media. But yes, Matt is correct. I do have that. But he is right. It is private. I don't just start randomly emailing, from that account, let's say. I do randomly email, but just not from that account. So yeah, that kind of thing is fine. It's your risk tolerance. For me, because it is private and it's my email, and the people that know me get it, I do put that on there. You're right.
Yeah, perfect. So Maria says you're awesome, thanks. And then Wade, of course, said that y'all are the absolute best.
I like Wade. Thanks, Wade.
Wade's awesome. So,
I think we get you though, Don.
Yeah. And then, of course, Caleb, what kind of rates do you want when looking for private money, and what rates do you want when lending out your own money? So I think it's going to be very similar to the answer we gave. Typically through the conversation, it's a conversation you have with your lender. You look at what's best for your business and have that conversation with what your lender wants.
Right.
As far as that goes, I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that. And of course, what do you look for when you lend?
So typically the way that I present it is, at the beginning of a relationship, like, when you're first starting to have a connection with them, I'm willing to pay a little bit more, but I tell them this ahead of time. I tell them that my usual rate is 6 to 8%, but because we don't know each other very well right now, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for you to take a walk with me. And so sometimes it'll go up to 8 or 10% for the new guy. But I make sure that I'm very careful to tell them it's because we don't have a relationship yet. I want you to feel really good and solid about it. And our normal rates are 6 to 8%, but I'm willing to pay you a little bit more in the beginnings while we're, getting to know each other.
Right. And that's changed because, we were paying out 10 to 12 pretty regularly. And so, but going back to those lenders and trying to get them at 6 to 8 now is pretty hard. Okay. So yeah. And we're not even introducing right now points, so when you're adding a point, or 1% onto that and adding additional points to that, when people start talking, oh, well, we'll pay, 2 and 10, 2 points and then 10%. Well, hard money is going to cost you around 5 points and 15%.
Right.
And 5 points are due up front. So, if I'm paying a couple of points on one, with a private money lender, they're getting it on the back end typically anyway, not up front. So I'm okay with that when I'm starting out with a lender. So,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a busy lender though, as well, is going to get better rates. The guy who's lending out $1 million, at a time, depending on where you're at. I know all of your properties in California are $1 million, Don.
Not where I'm at, thank God. But yes, a lot.
Okay. I was going to say, we generally borrow somewhere between the 150 to 200 is a very common loan for us. Depending rentals, it's actually a little bit lower, but it's pretty common. 10 and 2 is very, very common right now, and it's the guys that probably have a little bit more to lend that, and are busier that are charging, that kind of level. But I like to be right at that 8% kind of mark, especially if it's going to be a little bit longer than 6 months.
Yeah, I've hovered around 10 myself. And I always start the conversation with what their expectation is. I don't even offer. I just, how
don't offer.
Yeah,
find out what they're thinking.
Yeah. Have you lent before? What does that typically look like? If you haven't, what would you like it to look like? And that's where I always gauge the conversation myself. So lending for me, if somebody asks me to loan, I know how to utilize my capital to really get me great returns. So obviously I'm going to be one of the more expensive lenders. It's funny how that works, right?
Right.
I'm the cheapest borrower, but I'm the most expensive lender.
Well, that's the way it works, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so I'm assuming you two are probably very similar, but I don't want to speak for you.
No, it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
And if somebody's new and I don't know them, like Amy was saying before, it's automatically going to be 12. Okay. And I'm also collecting interest payments, which I've never once ever paid an interest
like a cheap date right now.
What's that?
I'm feeling like a cheap date right now.
Yeah. Wait, you brought that into the conversation.
I'm going to have to work on that. Oh, 12 and 2. God, you're a loan shark.
So, but I'm talking, in a first time, if I don't know them, and especially, I want interest payments, and I've never, like I said, I've never paid interest payments to a lender, but when you're starting a relationship, with that person, you just want to make sure they're performing, they know what they're doing, and move on to the next, give them a better deal.
You know what? I like interest payments. And I know it's kind of burdensome for people, but I mean, you don't buy a car without making interest payments. You don't pay it all at the end. And so I like that with new people, like people who don't have an extensive track record flipping houses or doing rentals. Mm-hmm. I think it's good for them to understand that, yes, it's kind of a pain in the butt. However, you will move a lot faster. If you
feel the pain. Yeah.
So I keep it for new people because I want them to keep the project moving because there's an inherent sort of laziness if you have all the time in the world and you feel like you have all the time in the world and there's no check writing going on other than to contractors or stuff. I've just seen that some people don't move at a fast enough pace. For some of this stuff because they think that the market is going to be hot forever. Like we're just going to keep going and keep appreciating and multiple offers and it'll sell in 3 days and like the rest of it. And, I think all of us understand this dance could stop at any time. The music could stop at any time. And I don't want to be the one, standing there without a chair. So, so I think about that as I'm looking at this and making these loans and thinking about it.
Agreed 100%. You got to feel the pain. So, and then Matt asked, do you do long-term loans for buy and holds? So I guess he's asking you guys specifically. Again, I'll say that I don't, but that's because I could do so well with my money doing what I do. So. Right.
And so I typically borrow purchase price, but I don't borrow rehab costs. I pay those direct just because that's primarily what I use the funds for. So if I don't have rentals going, I'll lend it out. Mm-hmm. But I have to say that I sort of agree with Don right now. I'm sort of holding things kind of close to the chest right now, just because the music can't go on forever, guys. It just can't. And so I'm being a little cautious about that right now. And so most private lenders, though, don't lend long-term, like 10 years, 5 years, 10 years.
There are, right before all of this, COVID stuff going on, you saw so many programs coming out for these long-term, from hard money. And the rates were actually really getting good. It's more like private money. So, but that you remember when it like all dried up in one day, like every hard money lender was like, oh, we're done, but they're now getting back. They're slowly dipping their toe back in again. And
and we knew that would happen. Because lenders have to lend, guys. That's how they make money, and so you knew it was a temporary problem, even though we all kind of had a small stroke about it, I think
those honestly that might be a better route to go, when we're talking about long-term, for those buy and holds is getting into some of that money that you're borrowing.
Yeah. And just to reframe, he might've been asking, like, do you borrow that way? Okay. Looks like he says, do you do long-term holds? I guess that question can go either way.
It could have gone either way. Sure.
My longest is 12 months because I'm doing a refi with my bank at that point to get all my private money lenders out in less than a year.
Yeah. Right.
So let's see here. We have one more question, and then we're at the tail end of this. So I'll let one of you guys read that one. I'm not even going to try.
All right, I get it. If the interest rate is 8%, is at an annual rate per project. For example, you borrow 100 grand, and the project takes 6 months from beginning to sold. Do you pay the lender 8,000 or 4,000 for the 6 months that you borrowed the money?
I've had it either way. So, but for the most part, unless they specify that it's per project, like you have to write the note differently. So it really depends on your lender. But if you say it's 8%, you have to make sure that that lender is not expecting 8%, that it's an amortized over 365 days. If you want to just pay them the 4,000, and we'd have to run a rate chart to see exactly what that's going to come out to. But yeah, you make sure that you specify that with them, because they might be thinking one thing and you're thinking another. So you have to actually specify, is it $8,000 when I pay you in 6 months, or is it amortized over an entire year?
And that's what Don was talking about. His, he's got a note, that his title company uses, and start, like, everybody trusts us, right? It's going to say on there, is this APR, is this a fixed amount, fixed amount? Because and we even have one that we just borrowed on for land. That's it's a multifamily, and we have no idea how long this is going to take. So we actually made a deal with the guy that we're going to pay him 50 grand, for the 100 grand we borrowed, but there's no term on it. There's no limit. There's no time. There's nothing. It's just 50 grand whenever we get around to it.
Oh, good Lord.
Right. But I mean, you can
talk about that later.
I didn't talk to you about this one, Amy.
I know you didn't talk to me about that. I would have written some protections in there for you.
So.
He loves to do that to me. He loves.
Okay. See, even those of us of our experience, we do kind of shoot from the hip every once in a while. So I mean, I clarity there. Like I always say, I pay 10%, but it's amortized for the time I use the money. So, and that there definitely needs to be clarity there. And part of that is, like, again, what can your project handle? I mean, if you're borrowing and, like, your return on investment, your ROI is 15% cash on cash return for the project before the cost of money. After the cost of money, they put you about 10%, and that would be with the 4,000 you're using for 6 months. If you're going to go with the 8,000, that could kick you down even closer to 5% return on all the work you did, which, depending on what market you're in, could be nothing. It could be not worth the time and energy to do it. You might as well go out and just sell real estate. So, you got to be clear with your lender. You got to be clear with yourself. You got to understand the numbers that you're working with on your project, and make sure that that's a profit that makes sense for everybody. Once you get a good established relationship with the right lenders, 8%, 10% on their money for the time that you have the loan is reasonable, especially if you're going to continue to put them back into new loans.
Right.
So.
Right. So earlier in this, Alan asked if we have those checklists that we can share. So
yes.
Don, I hope you don't mind, but I would send him over to the privatefundingacademy.com website.
100%. Yeah, no, I actually was going to save that for the end, and we're going to hit that because I knew you're going to have some place to send them. So
I'm light years ahead of you, Don.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's go ahead and share that as we wrap it up. You guys are actually, you built the course on lending. You actually cover both sides of how to be a lender and how to be a borrower. And that definitely something that I think that anybody watching this or listening to this, wherever they're listening, needs to check out. So where do they go if they want to check out what you guys put together?
Sure. So if you go to privatefundingacademy.com, you can see, Alan, if you go under resources, we have a whole bunch of free checklists for you there that you can use to manage your transactions with your lenders, one for the lender and one for you. So you can really work through navigating private lenders. And then if you opt into, and we've got a free course that gives you kind of an introduction and a flavor to everything. And Matt and I kind of explain some of those concepts to you. And if you're working with private lenders and you want to send them someplace so that they can feel really good about getting into this whole process with you, that would be the lender's course. That's available to them so they can manage their expectations. It will help manage the expectations. If you're totally new to private lending, and you've never talked to private lenders and you have no idea what you're supposed to say or who you're supposed to go with, you can jump into the borrower's course. We give you a really great couple hints, some things to think about when you're talking to private lenders. It's a really great intro course if you haven't gotten into that before.
Plus, and it gives you all the tools, resources. There's a ton of them in there in that course. When if you're paying for that borrower's course, because it's going to give you also that really what we don't like to present it this way, but let's just call it a credibility kit that you build, for yourself, just like you should as an investor. You're building this now for your private money lenders that you're trying to attract.
Right. So we give you lots of tips and tricks on how to get a hold of lenders and what to say to them and what to do, things you should have with you.
Where to find them too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely. So, and then of course, I want to just reiterate what I said at the beginning. I had Matt on a while back talking about the Rehab Estimator Pro, which is a game changer in estimating rehabs for wholesalers or rehabbers. I think it's definitely a must-have. And if you've checked that out and you've seen that interview, then Matt is solid, and him and Amy definitely put together something really good on the private money side as well. So, and check them both out. I think they're both great products. Both these individuals come highly respected in my book, and definitely have a lot to offer. So, any last words?
No, thank you so much for having us on, and we really appreciate helping us out here. And I hope we've helped some people kind of get some ideas and some concepts for private lending.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I hope this is kind of teed everybody up to kind of always be thinking about those private money lenders and who they can attract. So.
Absolutely. 100%. So perfect. If you got value from this show, make sure that you are liking it, sharing it, letting people know about it, reviewing it on iTunes or anywhere else you listen to it. Check out beinthisroom.com if you're looking to be part of a mastermind community. Amy's part of our Inner Circle Elite group.
Definitely have to be in the room, guys.
You have to be in the room. Yeah. So go to beinthisroom.com.
Where are you at, Victor? Come on. Calling you out. No, I'm kidding, Victor. I'm not calling you out.
Yeah.
Thanks for your comments, though.
Get them all. Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for all the questions. Caleb, Victor, Maria, Matt. Appreciate all you guys. Wade, up here.
Yep.
Let me make sure. Yep. So appreciate all the questions, interactions with the show. So beinthisroom.com for a great mastermind community. Make sure that you check out everything else we have going on. And thank you very much for listening. So I appreciate you guys, and thank you for being on.
Thanks, Don. It was great.
See you later.